8 sermons by Dr. Martin Luther, preached at Wittenberg in Lent, 1522. The 4th sermon, Wednesday after Invocavit. Dear friends, we have heard the things which are necessary, as, for instance, that the Mass is regarded as a sacrifice. Then we consider the things which are left to our liberty, such as marriage, the monastic life, the abolishing of images. We have treated these 4 subjects and have said that in all these matters, love is the captain. On the subject of images in particular, we saw that they ought to be abolished if they are going to be worshipped, otherwise not, although I wish they were abolished everywhere because they are abused. It is useless to deny it, for whoever places an image in a church imagines he has performed a service unto God and a good work, which is downright idolatry. And this, the greatest, foremost, and highest reason for abolishing the images, you have neglected and taken up the very lowest. For I suppose that there is scarcely any man who does not understand that yonder crucifix is not my God, for my God is in heaven, but that this is simply a sign. But the world is full of the other abuse. For who would place an image of silver or of wood in a church if he did not think that in doing so he was doing God a service? Think you Duke Frederick, the Bishop of Hull, and the others would have placed so many silver images in the churches if they thought it counted nothing before God? Nay, they would not do it. But this is not sufficient reason to abolish, destroy, and burn all the images. And why? Because we must admit that there are still people who have not the wrong opinion of them, but to whom they may be useful. Although they are few, yet we cannot and should not condemn anything which is still useful to the devotions of any man. But you should have taught that images are nothing, God cares nothing for them, and that he is not served nor pleased when we make an image for him, but that we would do better to give a poor man a gold piece than to give God a golden image. Or God has forbidden the latter, but not the former. If they had heard this teaching, that images count for nothing, they would have ceased of their own accord, and the images would have fallen without any uproar or tumult, even as it was already coming to pass. We must therefore be on our guard, for the devil is after us, through his apostles, with all his craft and cunning. Now, although it is true, and no one can deny that the images are evil because they are abused, nevertheless, we must not on that account reject them, nor condemn anything because it is abused. That would result in utter confusion. God has commanded us not to lift up our eyes unto the sun, etc., Deuteronomy 4:19, that we may not worship them, for they are created to serve all nations. But there are many people who worship the sun and the stars. Shall we, therefore, essay to pull the sun and stars from the skies? Nay, we will not do it. Again, wine and women bring many a man to misery and make a fool of him. Shall we, therefore, kill all the women and pour out all the wine? Again, gold and silver cause much evil. Shall we, therefore, condemn them? Nay, if we would drive away our one worst enemy, who does us the most harm, we would have to kill ourselves, for we have no greater enemy than our own heart. Even as Jeremiah says, the heart of man is crooked, Jeremiah 17:9, or, as I take the meaning, always twisting to one side or the other. And what good would that do us? He who would blacken the devil must have good charcoal, for he too wears fine clothes and goes to the fair. But I can catch him by asking him, do you not place the images in the churches because you think it is a special service of God? And when he says yes, as he must, you may conclude that what was meant as a service of God has turned into idolatry by abusing the images. He eagerly sought what God has not commanded and neglected God's positive command to help the neighbor. But I have not yet caught him. He escapes me by saying, I help the poor too. Can I not give to my neighbor and at the same time place images in church? That is not true. For who would not rather give his neighbor a gold piece than God a golden image? Nay, he would not trouble himself about placing images in churches if he believed that God was not thereby served. Therefore, I freely admit, images are neither here nor there, neither evil nor good. We may have them or not, as we please. This trouble has been caused by you. The devil would not have accomplished it with me, for I cannot deny that it is possible to find someone to whom images are useful. And if I were asked about it, I would confess that none of these things give offense to me, and if just one man were found upon earth who used the images aright, the devil would soon draw the conclusion against me, Why condemnest thou that which is still useful in worship? This challenge I could not answer. He would have successfully defied me. He would not have gone nearly so far if I had been here. He played a bold game and won, although it does no harm to the Word of God. You wanted to paint the devil black, but forgot the charcoal and used chalk. If you want to fight the devil, you must be well versed in the Scriptures and, besides, use them at the right time. Let us proceed and speak of the eating of meats. It is true that we are free to eat any manner of food, meats, fish, eggs, or butter. This no one can deny. God has given us this liberty. That is true. Nevertheless, we must know how to use our liberty and treat the weak brother differently from the stubborn. Observe, then, how you must use this liberty. First of all, if you cannot give up meat without harm to yourself, or if you are sick, you may eat whatever you like. And if anyone takes offense, let him be offended. And if the whole world took offense, yet you are not committing a sin, for God can excuse you in view of the liberty He has graciously bestowed upon you, and of the necessities of your health, which would be endangered by your abstinence. Secondly, if you should be pressed to eat fish instead of meat on Friday, and to eat fish and abstain from eggs and butter during Lent, etc., as the Pope has done with his fool's laws, then you must in no wise allow yourself to be drawn away from the liberty in which God has placed you, but do just the contrary to spite him and say, Because you forbid me to eat meat, and presume to turn my liberty into law, I will eat meat in spite of you. And thus you must do in all other things which are matters of liberty. To give you an example, if the Pope or anyone else would force me to wear a cowl just as he prescribes it, I would take off the cowl just to spite him. But since it is left to my own free choice, I wear it or take it off according to my pleasure. Thirdly, there are some who are still weak in faith, who ought to be instructed, and who would gladly believe as we do. But their ignorance prevents them, and if this were faithfully preached to them, as it was to us, they would be one of us. Towards such well-meaning people, we must assume an entirely different attitude from that which we assume toward the stubborn. We must bear patiently with them and not use our liberty, since it brings no peril or harm to body or soul, nay, rather is salutary, and we are doing our brothers and sisters a great service besides. But if we use our liberty without need and deliberately cause offense to our neighbor, we drive away the very one who in time would come to our faith. Thus, St. Paul circumcised Timothy because simple-minded Jews had taken offense. Acts 16:3. He thought, what harm can it do, since they are offended because of their ignorance? But when in Antioch they would insist that he ought and must circumcise Titus, Paul withstood them all, and to spite them would not have Titus circumcised. Galatians 2:3. And he held his ground. He did the same when St. Peter, by the exercise of his liberty, caused a wrong conception in the minds of the unlearned. Galatians 2:11 and following. It was on this wise. When Peter was with the Gentiles, he ate pork and sausage with them. But when the Jews came in, he would not touch this food, and ate no more with them. Then the Gentiles, who had become Christians, thought, Alas! We too must be like the Jews, eat no pork, and live according to the law of Moses. But when Paul found that it would injure the liberty of the gospel, he reproved Peter publicly and read him an apostolic lecture, saying, If thou, being a Jew, livest after the manner of the Gentiles, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? Galatians 2:14. Thus, we too should order our lives and use our liberty at the proper time, so that Christian liberty may suffer no injury and no offense be given to our weak brothers and sisters who are still without the knowledge of this liberty.